Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Conscious Design. I'm your host, Ian Peterman, and author of the book Conscious Design. And today I have with me Don Titus, residential designer, to talk about what you can do with your home in improving it rather than necessarily just going out and buying a new one and using the asset you already have. So welcome to the show. Good to have you here.
Oh, good to be here. Thanks, Ian.
Yeah, well, thanks really appreciate you taking time to get on here. First, everybody loves a good backstory. So getting to what got you into designing homes and really focusing on remodels and upgrading a house rather than, the new construction that a lot of people get focused on.
Yeah. So my backstory goes pretty far back, actually. I think I was 11 or 12 when I think it was my grandma said to me, I think Don would make a good architect when he grows up because he likes drawing and he's also good at math and science. Plus I play with Legos a lot. So that
Nice.
kind of planted the seed in my brain. And I took my first drafting class freshman year in high school and basically was hooked from there. And for whatever reason, I'm not totally sure why, but of all the types of buildings, that a person could design, it was always homes that intrigued me the most. So that was my interest from when I very first was attracted to this profession. I went to architecture school and got a little bit of a taste on working on different kinds of projects, and then following graduation worked for several different architects, and again got experience working on a lot of different building types, but it was still always the single family home that intrigued me the most. So when I unexpectedly got laid off in the recession of 2008-2009, and had to make a choice about what I was going to do next, there was no architects hiring at that point anywhere. So I was either find a new line of work or try to do something on my own, and I opted for the latter. So when I started my own business, it focused on homes mainly because, as I said, that was my primary interest, but also because I hadn't yet gotten my architectural license. So, my options were limited anyway. And homes are something that a person can design even without a license. So it made a lot of sense for me to do that. So when I first started my business, being that we were in the middle of a recession, I basically just took whatever work I could find. But as things progressed, as we came out of the recession, as the business grew, I found myself gravitating towards remodel and addition projects as the vast majority of the work that I do. I do design, a handful of new homes here and there, but the vast majority of my projects are small additions and remodels. And what I've found that I really enjoy about that project type is the opportunity to help homeowners take a home that they already know and love, in a neighborhood where they really like living, and make a small change that potentially makes a big difference in their quality of life. So it's really enjoyable work for me to do, to get to work with homeowners in that way.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's where, location is so important. I think we talked about this, initially is, right, if you're in a home and you love where you're at, it's way harder to replicate that location somewhere else than it is to modify homes. And that's something that you've mentioned, that's a huge driver for people is when you're really happy in a spot, right? You don't want to leave the neighborhood. You don't want to leave the location. You want to want to stay there. And if it's a really good location, homes don't pop up for sale. That's often what makes it even harder to try to move. And so people will opt in, but it's also not something that not everyone really initially thinks about, because there's a lot of focus in, well, you need to move, you need to buy a new house that's better. There's that kind of mentality of upgrading means buying something new. When you're talking to people, do you have people that come to you maybe looking for a custom house or building new, and then you're able to point out and kind of show like, hey, we can actually work with what you have? Is that a shift that you see people make, of going from I must have new to, oh yeah, I can, there is actually this option that we kind of gloss over and don't always think about?
Yeah, actually that shift hasn't happened a lot in my experience.
Okay.
And I think that's primarily because most of the clients who come to me come already having a plan for wanting to do an addition or a remodel.
Okay.
So, the much smaller number who are, seeking a design for a new house, a lot of times they've already made up their minds. Very often they've already purchased a piece of property to put that house on.
Okay.
There are a small number of clients who call me up and they're undecided. We're not sure if we want to remodel the house we're in, or look for another place, or potentially even build a new place. So with those ones, I do get to have that conversation, and I would say the majority of the time they do end up staying where they are. That's also, with the pandemic and everything, and the way home prices and material prices have been skyrocketing. That's been happening a lot more, not always by choice. A client will call me up and say, oh, we were going to buy a new house, but we can't afford it. So we're going to stay where we are and, remodel the house that we have. And, my response is, that's great. Let me help you with that.
Right. Do you find that there's a difference in, basic quality of life, right? So somebody that wants to remodel, does that usually help enhance? Does that make somebody love their place more? Is that kind of a better option in that way than the risk of going to a new? Is that like the people that do those remodels, how do they feel about that kind of options in looking at it, like their viewpoint of it?
Yeah, the feedback that I've gotten a lot is that, staying where they are and modifying their existing home does work really well and does tend to produce a really good result. And my theory as to why that is that, when a person has been living in a house for 5-10 years, maybe even longer, they know that house and they know what aspects of that house really work for them and what doesn't. And so for me to be able to sit down with them and listen to what they have to say, and then contribute some ideas for how we can change the aspects of the house that aren't working for them, it tends to lead to a really satisfying outcome.
And you earlier mentioned that a lot of it's small changes. So is, because sometimes when you think about a remodel, you're like, oh, you've got everything and change. But it sounds like that's not really the majority. Like most of it's not
Right.
a complete redo. So is it, you're talking about big changes? Is it really small? Are you able to make these huge changes in a room or part of a room? Like what is that impact to benefit ratio of what you have to do to really make a difference in a home.
Right. Yeah, so it varies quite a bit from one project to the next. But one thing that they do very often have in common is that the changes are relatively small. So,
Okay.
it may be that we're either adding a new master suite or expanding an existing bedroom to create a new master suite, but the rest of the house remains more or less untouched. Or one project I can think of, the house was lovely, and the clients really liked the house, except for the kitchen. The kitchen was really small and cramped and just didn't serve them very well. And so, we were able to blow out a wall and take some space from an adjoining room and completely redesign that kitchen so that it had a much better flow to it, and allowed them to entertain family and friends in a much more comfortable way. Whereas their old kitchen just, it wasn't possible with the way that it was laid out.
Right.
And another example I can think of, I had a project where all we did was add a laundry room to the house. It was like 50 square feet. It was tiny. But the fact that the homeowner, who was getting older, no longer had to go down the basement stairs to do their laundry, that made a huge impact on their quality of life.
Right.
So, that was really great to be able to be a part of that.
That's awesome. 50 square feet makes such a huge difference. Is it, and you're talking, so quality of life, right? When you're talking about that, and when you're going through a design process, there's a lot of reasons to make a change, right? It could be, oh, we like the look of it. What is some of the usual driving factors that somebody goes, oh, we should invest in making this better? Is it typically a quality of life, like adding a laundry room so you don't have to go down into the basement to do your laundry now, or are they more cosmetic? Kind of what's that usual driving factor?
Yeah, so the thing that I hear the most often is, we need more space. We don't have enough space.
Right.
And so, I always want to try and dig into that a little bit and figure out, why do you need more space? What are you going to do with that space? And sometimes it really is a question of just needing more space. Like, we have 4 kids in 3 bedrooms, so we want to add a bedroom so each child has their own personal space.
Right.
Other times it might be that they need a family room slash rec room where the kids can hang out and play games and eat snacks, and kind of have a space that's their own. And current, and so when the homeowners say we don't have enough space, what they mean is, we don't have space for these activities that we want to happen. And so, we can remodel existing spaces to make the space that they want. So it's not always necessarily about adding space to the home. Sometimes it is, but not always.
Yeah, it sounds like it's right. Somebody may say one thing, but there's you have to sometimes understand what does that actually mean? What's the context of, right, more space? Is it actually space, or is it we need to rearrange the space, or do something different? When you're going through that process, you mentioned that, you put forward design ideas and things like that. How much of it is, you redesigning, people come and say that redesign, is it much more of a joint, kind of that process of discovering what they're really needing, and is it really iterative, or is it more, I want a bedroom. Here you go. Here, I've already drawn a little diagram. Just make it drawings.
Right. Yeah. So it's definitely a joint effort. Um, and the way I think about it is, I'm an expert when it comes to home design, but my client is an expert when it comes to their own lifestyle, as well as something of an expert in the house where they live because they've been living there for such a long time. So, I'm looking to have conversations with them and see how we can bring those two fields of expertise together to create solutions to the problems that they're experiencing. I was going to say something else, but now I can't remember what it was.
Okay. All good. Well, now something that people are thinking about, right, in making home decisions is sustainability and that kind of thing. Are you seeing that as a driving factor for people wanting to remodel in terms of, not moving, basically not wasting resources in that way, or is that still, not, does that really not factor into a lot of the remodel work that you're seeing?
Yeah, that actually doesn't factor into a lot of the work that I do.
Okay.
I would say that a higher proportion of my clients are more driven by budget concerns than they are by sustainability concerns.
Okay.
So, I'm looking to take advantage of the fact that, that they are concerned about budget, and work with them on that, to make the most of what they have. Because, by very nature of the fact that they're staying in the house where they are, this is already, by its nature, a good way to conserve resources.
Right.
Because we're not looking to build something new. We're not looking typically to gut the whole house and completely redo it all. We're looking to make relatively small changes that will have a bigger impact.
Right. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
more, it sounds like way more bang for your buck when you do
Right.
something like that.
That's the idea. Oh, and I remembered what I was going to say. You had asked me if the process tends to be iterative, and the answer is yes, it does. So, typically we'll start by, me hearing what a client has to say, listening to what problems they're experiencing and, what they hope to achieve. And then, I'll come back to them with some design ideas, maybe 2 or 3 different options, and they'll give me feedback on those. And then just depending on their feedback, I might come back with revised versions of those options, or I might come back with some brand new options. But yeah, there's a lot of back and forth involved, because a lot of times, especially, for a homeowner who may not have been through this process before, it can be challenging to envision what exactly they want, or challenging to figure out what solutions are going to work best for them. And so when we actually get to the stage where we have some drawings and there's lines on paper, so to speak, I mean, typically it's digital, so lines on a screen,
Right.
they might look at that and think, oh yeah, that's kind of what I was looking for, but maybe we should try something else, or this is what I was looking for, but now that I see it, I realize that it's not going to work as well as I thought it would. Or we might see opportunities there that we didn't even think about when we were just talking. So, having this design process where, we're generating these drawings that are a representation of our conversation, that helps us to move forward with, creating this design that's ultimately gonna work for them and
Right.
help with getting what they need.
Does it, I'm curious, when in that process, right, you're iterating through, is it ever come to like needing to build mock-up model? Like, is there a level of that, or is it usually pretty well, like it's easier to understand, you're able to get it done and then get it to construction and make it, or do you need like extra layers in there to make sure that, right? Because once you start breaking down walls, you're pretty committed to making a change to your house, right? So
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's yet another reason for going through this design process, so that we can try to figure out those issues before you start breaking down walls. But yeah, as far as what you were saying about models, I typically do work with a three-dimensional design software, so that we can look at virtual models, and look at things
awesome.
in 3 dimensions. I don't really do physical models, just because it's pretty time intensive to create a physical model.
Yeah. Yeah.
And given again that so many of my clients are budget conscious, paying an additional fee to me to create a physical model is not something that I think would be in their best interests. But
Right.
to be able to do that virtually is definitely a very helpful design tool.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we do that for physical products too. It's prototypes are expensive, but occasionally we have people that are, they need to see it. They need to see, hold and touch it. But that's great. Digital is able to work so well. That's great, especially a large, and that's a commitment, right? To start knocking down walls. So that's great that you're able to create that level of confidence in the design and the layout, and be ready to just go forward with it. Perfect. Well, the last question then is, you do this for residential, you stay on the residential side. Do you ever, now that you're working for yourself, do you ever stray into the commercial side? Do you go into that, or are you purely residential, happy spot, never leave it?
It, for the most part, purely residential, happy spot, never leave it. The very rare exception to that would be, if it's a friend of a friend who has a small commercial project, I might take that on. Not so much because that's that's what my primary interest, more just to help them out.
Right.
The other type of project that I do some that's a little bit different would be small multifamily projects. So
Okay.
there's a lot of the same design principles involved as far as how the spaces get laid out.
Okay.
But construction and building code requirements are a little bit different when you're designing a triplex or a fourplex as opposed to a single family home. But
okay.
yeah, as far as the challenges of creating livable spaces, there's a lot of overlap between those building types. So
Right. And that's because it's below, like, apartment level is a whole different, but
right.
the 1 to 4 is pretty similar then, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking time to chat with me and talk about this kind of work and being able to do remodels. And for anyone that's wanting to connect with you and do a remodel instead of getting a house, a new different one, stay in your happy location, what would be the best way to get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me is to go to my website, donrtitus.com. And if you click on Let's Talk, there's options for how you can get in touch with me. You can schedule a phone call or a Zoom meeting, or schedule a time to have me come out to your house if that's your preference.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure a link to that is in the description. And yeah, it's been really great chatting with you. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Ian.